Rev up your engines!
Quadrajet says, I just bought a 2024 4Runner. Is there a correct way to break in the engine? We'll be doing a 1,200-mile road trip right away. You don't want to drive like an absolute lunatic, right? Just go the speed limit. Now, just because it's a brand new vehicle and you're putting a trip like that, you want to change your cruise control every once in a while. Like, say the speed limit's 70. You might go 72 for 15 minutes, then put it down to 68, because you don't want to just go at one particular speed while you break the engine in the whole time. So you might make it go up a little, down a little. Pretend it's a motorboat. Motorboats are that way. When you're breaking their motors, you don't want to go full blast yet, and you don't want to just run it at 3,000 RPMs. You want to go a little under for a while, then a little up, and change it a little just for the first 1,000 miles. You wouldn't want to just say put it at 75 and leave it on cruise control, because you don't want it to break in at one particular speed. You want to change the speeds up a little bit. Mark Scott 05 says, Scotty, what's your opinion on the new Ram 1500 with a 3-liter i6 Hurricane engine? Looking at one of the Toyota 3.5 Tundra. What do you think? Well, the Toyota 3.5 Tundras have had problems. Now, I don't trust Ram, and that is a new engine. They work fine brand new, but I've seen a lot of Dodge products, especially since Fiat and then Stellantis took over, have engine problems down the line. Let's wait 3-4 years, at least, maybe 5, to see how they held up. They might hold up, or they might be piles of junk like a lot of the stuff they made. Don't ever buy something when it comes out new. It's not a good idea. Look at Toyota. They came out new with the twin-turbo V6 in the Tundras, and they got to replace all those engines. So even Toyota, I would not buy anything the first time they built it. Manny Sanchez says, 2011 Ram 1500, universal joint issues. Yeah, they didn't make them all that well. Now, back in the day, it wasn't that big of a deal because we could replace the universal joints pretty easily, at least we mechanics with the tools. But now, the way they make drive shafts is you pretty much throw the drive shaft away and buy a new one with the joints already in. The way that they press them in a machine, they're not made to replace them all that easily. So, it's just another example of Ram making bad products because Fiat bought them, and now it's Stellantis. Their quality's going downhill, and those are big, powerful V8 engines, most of them, and the joints are just wearing out because they're not building them correctly. It's just typical stuff you're going to see from these companies. Stellantis, now that they own them, they're shutting down a Ram factory in Michigan. They say, oh, we're not going to build them more. We're going to lay off, I think it's 2,400 people or something. Hey, I'm not a fan of them. Kevin Korchak says, Scotty, I'm looking at saving up for a 96 C4 Corvette. I saw your video on one, how they're good cars. What should I look out for when buying one? All right. One, if a young kid owns it, run away. They drive them like maniacs. A lot of older guys have those. They don't drive them on rainy days. They store them in the winter so salt doesn't get on them. Also, look at the mileage. A lot of them are still pretty low mileage. Those are specialty cars. Pay a guy like me who knows cars to check it out before you buy it. You don't want a chance. I've seen people buy them, then they find out, oh, geez, the frame was bent and they welded it back together. Pay a mechanic to check it first. And the other thing is, it's a 96 C4. Don't overpay. The values of Corvettes is starting to really plummet. When I was a kid, they were real popular. I'm getting old. The older generation isn't buying those things anymore, and the young generation doesn't care about them. So, don't overpay. They always ask a lot of money for their toys, but guess what? Used toys don't go for much money these days. They often just don't. Travel with Aaron says, what's your best and cheap compact SUV car? Well, generally, best and cheap does not go together, right? Best and cheap, that worst and cheap, yeah, but best and cheap, that normally does not really go together all that well. If you're talking new, a lot of people are going out and they're buying these Mazdas because Mazda's 20%, I believe, is owned by Toyota. Their quality's up a bunch. And if you compare them to the Toyota, like a RAV4 SUV, the price differential is insane. It can be 15, 20 grand less. I mean, everybody wants SUVs. If you want cheap and reliable, don't get an SUV. Get like an old Camry. Sedan prices have dropped. I saw a guy the other day, made a nice video. Brand new 2025 Camry. Hybrid, got 51 miles a gallon. I paid 31 grand here in Clarksville, Tennessee for it. 31 grand. That same place, you're going to pay 56 grand for a hybrid RAV4 because it's an SUV, even though a lot of the stuff is basically the same. So you might rethink. If you went cheap, you might forget SUVs and get a sedan. John Horry says, Scotty, do you have a car for sale? Do you have a car for sale? I really don't sell cars. I just fix them, right? The used car business is often a very dirty business. Now, every once in a while, if I get another car, I sell my old car, and then my customers are fighting over each other to buy the old car because they know I took care of it and it'll probably last a long time. But I'm so cheap that why would I buy a new car when I got a 30-year-old Celica that runs fine, a 17-year-old Matrix that runs fine, and a 22-year-old Lexus that runs like it did when the day it was new? So I just keep driving them along. Maybe I'll drive them long enough that when they finally wear out, maybe I'll buy an electric car. By then, maybe they'll perfect electric batteries, electric cars, who knows? But very rarely do I ever have a car for sale because I take care of them and they keep running good. Now, why waste money? They're transportation modes, right, to get you from here to there. Roberto the Turtle says, Randy, hi, new to your stream. What do you think about 2000 era Jaguar X-Types? Well, Jaguars were beautiful cars. Right? They're meant to be looked at, not driven. Back in the day, decades ago, they were cutting edge technology, Jaguar, they made race cars and la, 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 la. But, they're now owned by Tata, the Indian company, and then part of that's owned by the Chinese. And I don't advise buying a Jaguar. I mean, they're beautiful looking cars, but they don't hold up over time. And they really never did, except really long, even before my day, they made pretty good cars, but then they just made kind of disposable, fancy rich man's cars. You got enough money to buy a Jag, you better have a lot of money to fix it too. And then, of course, Ford owned it for a while. Then they built those horrible ones that were like based on a Ford Contour. They were the worst things they ever made. Those were rolling piles of junk. James Olson says, Scotty, our 1982 Trans Am with 350s worth restoring. People liked them, but they were never all that expensive. Certain ones were. They had a certain special models. They only made a handful of them, and those are worth money. Now, the first thing you want to do in an 82 Trans Am is this. Jack it up, look under the bottom. If it's rotting away, run away. It's worth nothing now. 350 engines, if it's a regular one, they're relatively commonplace. You can get parts for them. Engines, you might have some fun with it if you can get it cheap enough. Just don't get suckered into like a lot of, it's a Trans Am, it's worth a fortune. Most of them are not. If you get one cheap and you want to fix it up and have some fun, go right ahead. Janessa Roman says, what do you think about a 2024 hybrid RAV4? Well, they're excellent vehicles. I was even thinking about getting one if somebody smashed into our car. We were driving on the East Coast in Rhode Island and Massachusetts with the masshole drivers there. So they call them masshole because they're in Massachusetts, right? Use your imagination for the rest. I see all these people bring me cars and they bring me new ones to look at. So why'd you buy a new car? They said somebody smashed into our old one. People drive like lunatics there, right? So if somebody did, I was thinking maybe I'd buy one of those things. The only thing I got against them is they're too expensive. I mean, those things can be 15, 20 grand more than a comparable Toyota Camry. I like them. They're just too expensive to me. I think they're overpriced. All SUVs, overpriced. People want them, so they raise the price of them. MK says, Scotty, does your wife know how to change a tire? Yeah, she knows how to change a tire, but she's got me so she doesn't have to. Ages ago in Buffalo, when they had a giant snowstorm, her and her sister had their grandmother's old Ford, and they got a flat tire and they put it on and they found out they put it on backwards because it was all covered with snow and they couldn't tell. She has me, so there's no reason that she has to change tires. And her Lexus has 4 Michelins on them and they're great tires. They never go flat, so there's no problems with that whatsoever. Michael Cox says, my check engine light is on, but I don't have a code. Now, normally your check engine light comes on, you're going to have a code because the codes make the check engine light come on. And then there's the reason behind it, and we mechanics have to figure out. They're relatively generic codes. Like it might say oxygen sensor, doesn't mean it's a bad oxygen sensor. It just means that there's a problem in the oxygen sensor system and you got to go through a bunch of tests. If you don't have a code and your check engine light is on, that is often a sign of either a failure of the main computer or you got a sensor that's bad and it's shorting out the whole system, making the check engine light come on. What you'd want to start out with is find a guy like me, a good mechanic, to put his real fancy scan tool on. Our scan tools go well beyond what a little cheap $50 one or even a $200 one might do. For example, I did one the other day, and the only thing wrong with the car was it had a bad sensor. And how did I tell? Because that sensor had a code, but it said 10 times. It had a bunch of other codes, but they were only one time. So I figured, okay, the 10-time code's probably tripping the other, so I replaced the sensor and it fixed the car. In your case, you don't have a code. So go to a mechanic. Maybe with his machine, you can find the problem. Because if not, a lot of times it means your main computer's going out. Because a lot of times they're like somebody who's sick. They don't know they're sick, so they don't tell you they're sick. If your brain especially is mentally disabled, you're not going to think that there's anything wrong because you're used to it, right? So a bad computer often won't tell you that it's bad. But it's bad enough to put the check engine light on, but it won't trip any codes because it's broken. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.